Alright, so you're trying to decide between the Bowers Wilkins Px7 S2e and the Sennheiser Momentum 4. Hey there, my name is Norb, and these are two of the most popular headphones that I reviewed, so here's my comparison. If you have any questions after watching this, hit me up in the comments or watch my deep dives, which I'll link to at the end. First point of comparison, of course, is the cost. The Momentum 4 retails for $379 in the US, though I've seen it below $300, and the S2e retails for $399, but you can find it for much cheaper refurbished on Bowers Wilkins' website, as low as $230. So they sell for about the same price on a regular basis, but if you look around, the Momentum 4 will probably be cheaper. By the way, I've added product links in the description which you can use to compare prices. Using those also helps the channel out at no cost to you. Alright, so both come with a nice case and both come with charging and audio cables. The case on the Momentum 4 is a bit on the bulky side, but it comes with a loop for a carabiner, so you can clip it to the outside of your bag instead of storing it inside. The case has a far more interesting feature though. It puts your headphones into low power mode when you put them inside. The problem is that if you turn the headphones off by long pressing the power button, putting them inside the case will actually turn them back on and sometimes reconnect them to your device. As a workaround, I added some Velcro to lower the middle piece, and I packed the headphones ear pads up, which avoids the magnet that turns them back on. The Px7 S2e's case, on the other hand, is nice, but it's less interesting. It feels fantastic, and it has great storage space, but it's just as bulky without the carabiner loop, so you have to put it inside your bag. Now, the charging cable that it comes with is USB-C to USB-C, so you may want to toss in a USB-C charger. The case usually won't be a deciding factor into whether you buy a pair of headphones or not, but that little bit of annoyance with the Sennheiser case is annoying. If you don't really care for that extra feature, then I'm calling it a tie. Moving on to the battery life, this one is no contest. The Px7 S2e offers up to 30 hours of music, while the Momentum 4 offers up to 60 hours. Now, I find the power management on the S2e to be overall better. Like, it'll turn itself off after it's been off your head for a few minutes. The power management on the Momentum 4, however, is much smarter, letting it enter into a low power mode that automatically turns it back on and connects when you put them back on again. Finally, they both have a quick charge. 4 hours of music in 5 minutes with the Momentum 4 versus 7 hours of music in 15 minutes with the S2e. Now let's take a look at the user interface and design because these two are very different. The Momentum 4 keeps things simple with one button for power and Bluetooth connection, while everything else is managed through the touch controls on the right ear cup. It also has on-ear detection, though it sometimes struggled with my glasses, pausing when I adjusted them. It includes a USB-C port for charging and audio, as well as a 2.5mm audio jack. In terms of build, it's mostly plastic with replaceable protein leather ear cups, fabric on top of the headband, and a silicone underneath. It weighs 316 grams or just over 11 ounces. The Px7 S2e I think looks more refined. It uses physical buttons for everything, like music control, volume, calls, even your smart assistant. There aren't any touch controls here, just solid buttons. It automatically pauses your music when you take them off or put them back on, and this works more reliably than on the Momentum 4. You can also customize how this feature behaves through the app. Speaking of apps, both headphones have one, but while the Momentum 4's app focuses on features, the Bowers Wilkins app for the S2e doubles as a music hub to connect your streaming services. It also handles the features, but having that on there is actually kind of nice. It's the first app of its kind that I've ever used. In terms of build, the S2e is plastic with metal trims, fabric on the ear cups and the headband, and protein leather under the headband and for the replaceable ear cups. It only has one USB-C port, no audio jack, but you can charge and listen to music simultaneously while using the USB-C cable. It weighs 307 grams or just under 11 ounces. When it comes to looks, it's definitely a matter of taste. Both come in a variety of colors, but the S2e just looks and feels more sophisticated to me. Looks aside, they both have had some reported quality build issues. Early in its run, the Momentum 4 seemed to have a lot of quality control issues. In fact, my first pair had the power button break within a day. This is actually my second pair. But this brings me to an important point. In my original review, I called out the Momentum 4 for having a lot of bugs with connectivity. This has gotten a lot better, although the case is still a bit of an issue, as I mentioned before. With the S2e, there have been some reports of leather in the ear pads and the headband coming off after some use, although this was much more common with both the previous version, that's the S2, and the Px8. I haven't run into this issue at all myself though. Talking scores, when it comes to interfaces, it's a tie. If you like touch interfaces, then the Momentum 4 wins, but if you prefer buttons, then the S2e wins. As for the design, I feel that the S2e has a better build and visual design, so I'm giving it the win there. In terms of comfort, the Momentum 4 has soft ear pads and a relaxed clamping force. They create a great seal and work well with glasses, but the ear pads are a little bit shallow on the inside, so your ears may touch them. My main issue is that they get hot and uncomfortable in warm or humid environments. The Px7 S2e, on the other hand, has firmer ear pads with wider openings, so my ears actually fit better inside without touching the foam inside. The clamping force is a little bit tighter, but it is comfortable even with glasses, and after a few months, they loosen up pretty nicely. The firmer ear pads don't mold to your head as well, so more noise can slip in, but they don't get as hot. Noise canceling and ambient sound modes are areas where these take a very different approach to things. With the Px7 S2e, you can turn noise canceling on, pass-through on, and you can turn both off. You can use both the app and the button on the left ear cup to switch between these. With the Momentum 4, you can set it to adaptive noise canceling, meaning that it adapts to the sound around you, or you can set it manually, either using the slider in the app or the touch controls to determine how much noise canceling or transparency you want. My only issue with this way of doing things is that there's no clear way to turn both of these off. It also has wind noise reduction. I find it kind of useful for windy days. That said, the pass-through on both was just about on par, with both being excellent. They both rejected overt noise as well, while still providing a realistic soundscape. The Momentum 4 also gives you the option to auto-pause music when it goes into transparency mode, and you can set it to automatically turn transparency on during phone calls. On top of all this, I found the noise cancelling itself on the Momentum 4 to be much better than the Px7 S2e. It simply blocked more noise. So I'm giving this one to the Momentum 4. It has way more customization and the noise cancelling is better, although you can't turn both the noise cancelling and transparency off, and if you want that as a feature, then the Px7 S2e is the only game in town here. Before we go on to sound, if you're using these for calls, take a listen. This is the sound of the Px7 S2e's microphone in a quiet room. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. This is a microphone test of the Sennheiser Momentum 4. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Overall, both did well, but I do prefer taking calls on the Px7 S2e. It's just simpler. That said, people have told me that the microphone on the Momentum 4 sounds better to them, and they both reject outside noise well, so I'm calling this a tie. Alright, so now it's time to compare the sound, which I'll divide into two major areas, music and movies. A few technical notes. Both of these use pretty much the same codecs, SBC, AAC, aptX, and aptX Adaptive, and they both use Bluetooth 5.2. The Momentum 4 also handles aptX HD, although that shouldn't really matter with aptX Adaptive. Additionally, both can multi-connect and pair up to 8 devices, and this is easy to manage on both using their apps. Automatically switching between devices was pretty reliable on both. Now, both of these also use USB-C audio, which some call DAC mode, and this will get you the best sound quality out of both of them. You can use the Momentum 4 either on or off by using the 2.5mm to 3.5mm audio cable, although I'm not really a fan of the way this changes the frequency response. Plus, I hear a little bit of an electrical buzz when I do this. The S2e, on the other hand, has to be powered on for use, although it also comes with a USB-C to 3.5mm cable, and if you're using USB-C to USB-C, it's also charging. Finally, both include some level of sound personalization options using their apps. Sennheiser gives you a ton of options with the Momentum 4. A 5-band EQ with additional bass boost, a podcast mode, included EQ presets, programmable EQ settings you can save, and adjustable sound personalization that's done through an audio test. On top of that, it also has programmable sound zones that will apply both an EQ and noise cancelling setting wherever you enter a specific geographic location like your job or the gym or your home. The Px7 S2e, on the other hand, just has a 2-band EQ. Super simple. Don't get me wrong, this is not a bad thing. For most people, simpler will be better. But if you really like to tweak your sound, then Sennheiser's got you covered. Even if you don't, the sound personalization feature is super easy and it's what I recommend for most people. Now, for the rest of this, I'll compare the two headphones with their basic settings, although I'll call out exceptions where necessary. Both are bass forward, meaning that they emphasize the lower part of the music. In the case of the Momentum 4, this means a slightly more exciting sound, while the Px7 gives a slightly more relaxed sound. Starting with the Momentum 4. It has a lot of bass, excellent physicality, there's a bit of a dip in the mids and some spikes in the highs to bring out some extra detail, but these aren't overt. It's this type of frequency response that makes it sound exciting. At the highs, you still get some good presence and brilliance, but I found it a little exhausting at times. Still, because of the tuning and its sensitivity, I found the timbre to be excellent. I am a huge fan of both the lo-fi and classical, and both of those do extremely well with the Momentum 4. The soundstage is decent, with a solid instrument separation, but there's no spatial mode. Left-right separation is good and clear, and while the sound is never open, it also doesn't necessarily feel too cramped. My complaints about the Momentum 4 come down to exhaustion during long listening sessions and volume, though these are very minor. First off, the overwhelming amount of bass and sub-bass. It's fun at first, but I got tired of it pretty quickly. The way that the upper part of the frequency response is shaped, it makes it feel a little bit harsh at times. As for the volume, look, I'm usually using them at the lowest possible volume settings because the headphones don't really go all that low. On the other hand, pushing them to max volume doesn't really feel all that loud, and that's because there's a dip in the frequency response in the areas where voices would really resonate, so they sound a bit quieter. They sound good, mind you, just a little bit pulled back. Moving on to the Px7 S2e, the default tuning is warm, relaxing, and excellent for long stretches of general purpose listening. Because of the way the tuning is on the S2e, this comes out as a bit dark at times, and the bass comes off as a bit overpowering at some points, even if it is smooth with good physicality to it. This is especially true with music with lots of bass and sub-bass. I didn't find the sound to be bloated, but it might come off to some as not being very crisp. That's because in order to get that relaxed sound, the S2e also gives up a bit of detail, especially in the upper registers. What this means is that the timbre doesn't sound quite as natural in some cases, like with violins, and the soundstage can be a little bit intimate at times. Directionality and separation is still good, but it is not super crisp. Normally, that would be considered a bad thing, but that's not the case here. In the mids, where voices and instruments tend to live and where the warmth really comes from, they're well presented and full. They do give up some of the detail for that warm sound, but you can bring this detail in by pushing the treble and the EQ up. This will make voices and instruments pop a little bit more. When comparing it to the Momentum 4, the edges to the music are softer, which is why these are so great to listen to for long periods, and why the Momentum 4 feels both more exciting and more exhausting. The default treble is decent, but definitely laid back. I'm a fan of detail when I'm listening critically, but when I want to relax, too much detail gets in the way. The problem with the Px7 S2e is right there though. The sound is sometimes a bit too relaxing, and sometimes feels like it has a bit of a veil to it. As for specific genres, I generally prefer the Momentum 4 for anything where I want more excitement and something that just sounds more crisp. Pop, hip-hop, jazz, rock, metal, and most electronic music. I especially love it for classical music because of the timbre. It's just great, it's just natural, especially with string instruments. In fact, the one hard recommendation I'll give is that if you'll be listening to mostly classical, you should probably really consider the Momentum 4. This said, I prefer the Px7 S2e for indie folk, indie rock, and more relaxed jazz. Basically, whenever I want to chill with my music, and when I want to listen for a really long time, this is what I pick up. That's not to say that the S2e can't do more exciting stuff. It can. But the missing level of detail in the highs and the more veiled timbre is where the S2e loses me. Finally, for movies, both are decent, but I found that the S2e was overall better. Yes, the Momentum 4 is more exciting, but the voices are clearer relative to the rest of the mix with the S2e. So overall for sound, I think that more people watching this video will probably be happier with the Momentum 4, especially for music. That said, note that between the two, my personal preference is actually the Px7 S2e when it comes to overall sound. Now, if you watched it all the way through and you're wondering who should buy what, then I don't think you can really go wrong with either. If you prefer a more relaxed sound, or if you don't need a ton of personalization features, and if noise cancelling is not already that important to you, then the S2e is going to be your better choice. And in fact, it's my personal preference because of the sound, although I do tweak the EQ some. That said, I do think that most people will be happier with the Momentum 4. It has a more exciting sound, the noise cancelling is better, and it has a ton of features. But if you're very sensitive to ear heat or you live somewhere very humid, then the comfort might become an issue. So there you have it. If you want to find out more, click here or here if you want to watch my full deep dive into either of these, or click in this playlist right here to see more comparisons.